Social media just entered a new phase, and it's about to split everyone into 3 groups. And the problem I'm seeing is only one of those 3 groups is going to turn attention into actual income for years to come. The other 2 will spend years building something that disappears the second they stop posting. And every personal brand that compounds, that stands the test of time, basically has these same 5 things underneath it. So if you're struggling to turn your content into traction and real growth that actually feeds your business, it's probably because you're in one of those 2 groups right now, and you don't even know it. So in this video, I'll show you which lane that you're actually in, and I'll walk you through the system to build a personal brand that people trust and that actually builds wealth. The first lane is essentially the playbook everyone else is talking about. It's about blowing up as fast as possible and go viral. And the idea behind that is, and was, that views equal success and income. And that kind of used to be true up until 2024, 2025-ish. Part of your strategy was going broad as much as possible and then basically letting the algorithm sort the rest, because people look through the rest of your content anyway. And naturally, a big percentage of those people converted over to become clients, check your offers, and become followers. This playbook does not work anymore because algorithms have figured out that sort of viral content that goes as broad as possible has a certain kind of viewer intention attached to it. They basically understand that broad content pulls in broad people, right? Surface level viewers in a way, basically people who are on the app to get dopamine hits, right? That's their own intention, to swipe, get another hit, and basically never think of you as the creator again. And the algorithms take note of that. So even if you do go viral as part of your strategy, you're actually filling your audience and confusing the algorithm with people who will never have what it takes to become real clients, real followers. And then you're like, well, I got lots of views, but no business coming from it. Why? I don't know. And that's a massive trap a lot of people are in right now. What makes this whole thing even worse is that 90% of the advice out there is teaching and talking just about this one lane. Now, the natural reaction to counter all of that would be to stop chasing strangers and to basically just post for people who already know and follow you, because, right, this would make more sense. Plus, it would feel way more authentic and safer, right? Which is lane 2. The big problem with this is, though, if you use Instagram, for example, to really build your personal brand and fuel your business, the algorithm now categorizes you how you use the platform. So if your engagement signals look like somebody posting for people who already just know them, it basically files you as a private personal account. And once it does that, reaching new people becomes a lot harder suddenly, because the algorithm's frankly confused when you can't grow a business and can't grow your brand if nobody new finds you and starts to build the whole trust relationship with you. Now, the big problem is, though, if you fail in lane 1, it's kind of obvious, right? Because you're trying to go really broad and reach a lot of people. If you fail and you're in lane 2, it's kind of hard to spot because it starts to fail silently, right? It still kind of feels okay because you still get comments from people that you know and things just feel like they're moving, but it quietly goes nowhere. Which brings me to the lane that actually works, and it's the one that almost nobody's deliberately in. Because this one's actually not about chasing algorithms. It's about building something that the algorithms just can't touch. Basically, a personal brand so rooted in trust and people standing behind it that when the platform changes and when the algorithms go crazy and when the copycat creators show up in your space to copy everything, none of it matters because you're the one to remember. You are irreplaceable in your niche. And once that's built, everything else compounds. The right people keep finding you, trust keeps stacking, and everything downstream just flows, right? Your offers, people booking you, ads suddenly start to cost a fraction of what everyone else is paying and what you were paying probably, and opportunities come seemingly out of nowhere. Now, I've actually chosen deliberately to follow this lane for almost a decade. You might have noticed it. I don't chase virality, yet I've made millions of dollars with my personal brand, and I call this the empire lane because an empire is built and not stumbled into. And it's honestly the only lane that will survive what's coming, and honestly all the brands that survived up until now also had this. So every personal brand that compounds, that stands the test of time, basically has these same 5 things underneath it. Let's start with number 1, which is the one that decides whether the algorithm even shows your content to new people anymore. And this whole thing actually starts with the algorithms, because nowadays, with all the AI and millions of creators flooding in, its number 1 job is to filter out the boring, generic stuff. I actually called this years ago in my videos right here. I actually predicted this. You guys didn't believe me. At least some of you didn't, calling me names, but here we are. But the algorithms now filter for unique content and against generic crap, right? So the moment you say what everyone else is saying or what AI would have spit out, You're not competing at all anymore, not in your space. You're just not competing anymore because you're getting filtered out immediately. Because people nowadays feel the generic vibe instantly, and so do obviously the algorithms. And it's not a new thing to happen. We've been there multiple times before. Just think about the early App Store, iPhone App Store days. For a very short time, just having an app was really enough. If you remember Flappy Bird, for example, this thing at one point did $50K in a day back in those days. But very shortly after, people figured it out and tons of near identical copies start showing up and Flappy Bird was gone. Nobody cared anymore. And as a result of that, suddenly just coding up a quick, funny app wasn't what mattered anymore. So any powerful personal brand has something of novelty to share. And before you get this whole thing wrong, novel value doesn't mean that you need to reinvent the wheel or come up with something totally new every time you create content. Because after all, there's only so many topics in a niche. Novel value actually just means taking something people already want and wrapping it into something only you can bring to the table. That's the thing that makes people remember you. You know, whether that's a contrarian take, some counterintuitive insight, or your own data from actually testing things out or doing cool stuff. Yeah, I would recommend you to do that. Or your backstory or whatever it is. So all these topics, all the same topics that everybody else talks about are your entry ticket, and your take on these things is the reason the people stay and remember you. And this is honestly why I believe this whole don't niche down, build your brand for who you are crap that's out there over and over again recently is honestly the dumbest advice going around right now. I mean, just think about it. How can you have a contrarian take or your own insights about something if you just don't go deep enough in the lane to actually have an insight, right? If you don't have a niche, you're just a person with opinions and no reason for anyone to care. I think that's the major point, right? Basically, you're like the weird uncle, the smarty pants uncle that everybody hates. By the way, I love all of my uncles. Let's just get this out of the way. Right, so let's say we got all locked in on that, right? You've got it. You've got a real take, something only you can say in a way you can say it. But here's the hard truth most people get wrong. At this point, just having this angle doesn't matter yet because nobody trusts you after seeing one video. Nobody even decides that they like you after seeing one video. I've actually done lots of research on this, but that only seems to happen after they've seen you 4, 5, 6 times without even realizing it. And that whole thing only works if they can actually tell and understand that you are the same person they've seen already over and over again before they even read a word. Here's what I mean. Just look at this. Who is this? Probably you know exactly who that is. How about this? Probably as well, depending on who you follow. But the point being is, you're not recognizing them because these people are famous, which is a whole nother continuation of this whole thing. But you're actually recognizing the look, right? Whether that's something about their personality or their set, the way it's shot, the lighting, the framing. And this is what I call the half-second swipe test. Right? In the half second before somebody keeps scrolling, can somebody actually recognize that it's you just from the look alone, right? Because again, the algorithm gives you multiple shots at the same person. It'll put you back in front of them again and again. So every time you actually look exactly the same, you start to stack up points and each one fires a little faster. And people scroll through, they're like, oh, I remember this person. I remember. It's that weirdo that speaks weird, for example. Until eventually, doing it over and over again, you punch through the noise and they remember your name, and then they start to only take a closer look, start to binge your content ideally after that. If you look generic or boring or different every time, every view basically starts from zero. And to them, you're basically a stranger forever. Even though they've seen you probably multiple times, they just haven't realized it. So point being, if you want to pierce through the noise, you need to have consistent framing, a consistent shot, a consistent color scheme, font choice, a format or structure, or just something recognizable about you and the person, whether that's your look, your personality, your energy, a jacket, some whatever that might be. People are gonna remember you so much easier. So that gives you already a massive advantage. Now, this actually ties right into the next one, and this might be the most misunderstood thing in content ever. Not just right now, but ever. And I kind of changed my mind a little bit on that one recently. Should you go for quality or quantity? People ask me that all the time in my DMs. And here's the thing. Times have changed. And it's not neither or. At this point, it's actually both. And you probably already know the reason why. Because at this point, everyone and their mother is posting content, lots of mediocre content, using AI, copycat content. And because everything got flooded, the same thing happens as with the App Store example. First of all, the bar for quality jumps, right? Because people just have way more to choose from. Suddenly having a Flappy Bird is not enough anymore. And because of the nature of social media in this case, the volume you need, unfortunately, jumps too, right? If you remember what we just said, recognition only stacks if they see you again and again. And lots of people post a lot, so you need to post a lot as well. And here's the trap where almost everyone picks a side and blows out big time. Honestly, me included. I only recently had the epiphany because people either flood the feed with forgettable junk, AI generated junk or whatever, just to post as much as possible. That's what lots of gurus talk about, but they'll get downranked anyway, just because, you know, algorithms hate it, low quality generic content. Or they polish one thing to death every month, overthink things, and they wonder why it just doesn't stack up anymore, right? Still works to an extent if you already have trust, but honestly, both of them lose right now, and you're going to squeeze yourself out from both ends because it's just a matter of fact that you need the volume and every single piece has to be worth remembering. That is the new bar. And yes, there's actually a way to do both without going crazy. So let me show you a system to generate quality content at volume, the one that puts you above everyone else. And trust me, people pumping out great content, quality content every day are not more creative than you. They just have a process that makes it easier and repeatable. Now, if we were to look at the whole content creation process from start to finish, this is what it takes, right? Most people, first of all, spend way too much energy winging each one of these points individually, right? It starts from the idea, from the research, basically the core of every content strategy. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, do you actually understand your niche well enough to spot the ideas that are worth making and then layer in your angle from step one to make it feel like nobody else could have made it? Right? That alone, honestly, will just put you ahead of 90% of content creators currently. Obviously, then we need to make content from an idea, right? So we need to script this whole piece. And if you take hours coming up with a script from scratch all the time, obviously you're going to bleed energy and lots of time. So to make that process easier, you're going to save so much time using content and storytelling frameworks to hold attention and to keep people watching. Because I know people spend hours on hooks and scripts trying to come up with them all the time from scratch. Now, once you have that, obviously you need to go ahead and film this whole thing. And most people think this is the part that takes the most time when creating content, but this is actually the smallest of them all. Because once you've dialed in your filming process, right? Your camera, your lighting, your set, your angles, and basically the whole visual, you just, at some point, just need to turn it on and just talk to the camera. That's the smallest piece of them all. And lastly, kind of tying it again back to the whole visual signature and recognizability, which is a huge thing now. You need to find your style in the edit, right? Basically, the way it looks, the way it feels, font elements, colors. Because if you just go with the flow and kind of make up a new piece of content all the time, it kind of looks and feels random. Once you've got these dialed in, people are going to recognize you. People are going to start to trust you inherently way more, just because you feel like what I always call a purposeful creator. Now, with this whole content engine set up, there's still one thing, and most people actually mess this up right there, and it's the reason why people's creators' personal brands stay stuck for years without anything working. Because the engine that you just built is only as good as how fast you can actually tune it, which brings me to the next point, the one that changes everything. I'm sure you've noticed it yourself, but social media is changing really fast, and at times it might feel like it's really hard to keep up with it. And it is true, right? But at the same time, with all the tools and AI that we have available, right now it's the easiest to actually keep up and actually stay on top of the game. So first of all, right now, Instagram is still the strongest platform by far, especially for this process, the fast iteration, right? Because you can churn out multiple videos a day if you really go all in. And basically you can rapid fire and pressure test all these elements of the engine before, right? Throw them into trial reels, for example, and get a massive overview of how your audience behaves and what actually works for you pretty quickly, right? If we compare that to long form content or, for example, YouTube long form, the feedback on there is just way too slow when you're still trying to tune the engine, right? Instagram wins above everything else here. And it's really important that you do iterate fast. All of my clients, for example, when they come to work with me, the first phase is always about doing this and not looking at their views too much at first, because we've got to tune the engine and we've got to iterate pretty fast to know what works to be able to scale. By the way, if you want me to personally help you build this, there's a link to learn more and apply down below. Now, with that being said, what I want you to do is now go through the engine, post according to the engine, then read the signals, your retention curves, the skip rate, the comment depth, and basically everything in there. Tune it up and double down on not just the content, but actually the elements, the frameworks that actually hit, that work with your audience. Because it's different for every niche, even for the same niche, just with different audiences. And every time you actually put in these reps, you basically learn something you can use over and over again and fine tune your content even more. And if something doesn't work, people might be like, oh, I'm going to stop doing this. Even better, because that shows you to focus on other things first, or using a different angle or framework or whatever it is. Now, once that whole loop is running, this is where everything starts to shift. And this is where it stops feeling like you're chasing the algorithm and it starts feeling like the algorithm is actually working for you. And your brand is being built in a way that, basically becomes a real asset. Your offers are going to convert way easier. It's like insane. We've had some clients that literally 7x their revenue within 2 months with us. If you run ads, for example, it will get a lot cheaper. People will start to take you way more seriously, and crazy opportunities will show up because people trust you already before they've even spoken to you, because they feel like they know you. And honestly, I think that's what people are actually trying to say when they tell you to not niche down. I just think they say it the wrong way, right? Because it was never about staying broad and just being a free spirit and don't care about anything. It was always about building something so specific and so trusted that you actually become irreplaceable somewhere. That's what it means. Your empire, essentially. And to continue building that empire, watch this video next. I don't know what it is, but the algorithm thinks you'll love it. And honestly, I think it's totally right.